You ever hear a story that just stops you in your tracks, makes you hold your breath, and wonder how a tiny little dog could possibly make the difference between life and death? Well, this one happened on a blistering summer day in Phoenix, Arizona. One of those afternoons where the asphalt literally seems to radiate heat, and the air feels like it's pressing down on your chest. You could see mirages on the streets, cars parked like metal ovens baking under the sun, and the kind of heat that makes people think twice about stepping outside. And it's in that kind of day, with temperatures hovering over 100 degrees, that a Pomeranian named Bella became a hero in the most unexpected way. Bella wasn't some trained service dog, and she wasn't enormous or intimidating. She was tiny, a fluff ball of golden fur, eyes bright with curiosity and energy, and a personality that made you laugh even on the worst days. Most people think Pomeranians are all cuteness and high-pitched yips, and yeah, that's true. Mostly. But if you ever met Bella, you'd know she had spunk, smarts, and an unshakable determination. She belonged to the Garcia family, who lived in a quiet suburb of Phoenix, streets lined with palm trees and pastel-colored houses. Their youngest, baby Lucas, was 6 months old, sweet, sleeping through most of the day, and completely unaware that the world outside could be dangerous. It started like any ordinary day. Mom and Dad were running errands, Bella trotting along happily, nose sniffing the air, tail wagging. Baby Lucas had been asleep for a while, and someone, honestly, probably just distracted, left him in the car for a few minutes. A few minutes that, under the Phoenix sun, could feel like an eternity. I want you to imagine that scene. A little infant in a car parked in full sun, windows rolled up, metal hot enough to burn if you touched it. The kind of heat that can send a body into distress in 10 minutes or less. And then there's Bella, standing on the pavement outside, her paws warm from the asphalt, looking up at the car, sensing that something isn't right. Most people wouldn't notice a tiny Pomeranian and a sleeping baby in a parked car. Most people wouldn't realize danger was brewing until it was almost too late. But Bella did. From the moment she saw Lucas in the back seat, she froze for a second, her little ears twitching, eyes scanning. And then, she started doing what Pomeranians do best when they get serious. She made noise. And not just a little noise. This was barking, yipping, squealing in rapid-fire bursts. But when she realized that wasn't enough to get anyone's attention, she did something remarkable. She started honking the car horn. Over and over, pressing with her tiny paws on the button that beeped and beeped, her small body jumping up and down, focused entirely on one goal: get help. And that's where the panic starts to sink in, because you understand immediately that the baby is vulnerable. The heat inside that car was rising fast. You could imagine the steam on the windows, the baby's tiny body starting to feel uncomfortable, maybe even scared if he stirred. Bella, tiny as she was, became the alarm system nobody else noticed, the first line of defense. And let me tell you, a Pomeranian honking a car horn nonstop in a quiet Phoenix neighborhood? People notice that. People walk outside, look around, maybe laugh at first, thinking it's just a dog being silly. But when it doesn't stop, when that noise doesn't quit, and when your brain starts connecting the dots, tiny dog, parked car, summer heat, you start running toward the scene. I remember someone said later that they saw her jumping and heard the horn from 2 blocks away. I thought it was a car alarm gone haywire, they said, until I realized it was just this little dog refusing to give up. And that's the thing about Bella. She refused. She didn't bark once and stop. She didn't get distracted by the mailman or a passing cat. She honked, barked, yipped, scratched at the glass, doing everything she could to alert someone that a life was in danger. Above all this, the parents were frantically inside a nearby store, realizing too late that Lucas had been left in the car. Their hearts dropped, panic setting in as they rushed outside, trying to reach their child before it was too late. And then the neighbors started reacting. Some grabbed water bottles, some called 911 immediately, and that's when the police were dispatched. Every second felt like hours. The heat, the horn, Bella's relentless determination. It was a crescendo of tension that you could almost feel in your chest. The officers arrived quickly, but let me set the scene. A tiny Pomeranian, paws pressed to a metal steering wheel, body bouncing with energy, fur glistening with sweat in the Arizona sun, eyes blazing with focus, making sure nobody in the street missed this. And inside that car, Lucas slept peacefully, oblivious, completely unaware of how close he had come to serious harm. It's almost cinematic, the tiny dog on a mission, a baby in peril, neighbors watching, sun blazing, police racing. Bella's courage wasn't just instinct, it was something more. Dogs, especially ones like Pomeranians, aren't typically seen as heroic in the movies. They're the comedic relief, the spoiled lapdog. But Bella, in that moment, rewrote the narrative. She became the protector, the sentinel, the tiny, courageous force that refused to let a little human suffer while the adults were distracted. And I think that's what makes this story so unforgettable. It's not just that a dog alerted someone, it's how she did it. Persistent, unwavering, and with a heart bigger than her body. By the time police reached the car, Bella hadn't stopped. She was still honking, still barking, still jumping. Officers quickly assessed the situation, opened the doors, and the heat inside the car hit them like a wave, scalding, suffocating. They scooped Lucas out immediately, placing him in safe hands, while Bella danced around like she had just accomplished a victory parade. And you could see it. The baby, calm now, the dog, triumphant, and the parents, shaken beyond belief, but so thankful that their little one was okay. It's moments like this that make you rethink what courage looks like. It doesn't have to be enormous or flashy. Sometimes, it's a tiny dog refusing to quit, refusing to ignore danger, refusing to let a life slip away while others are distracted. That afternoon, Bella became more than a pet. She became a hero in the truest, purest sense. And even after Lucas was safely inside the shade, hydrated, and calm, Bella didn't immediately relax. She circled him, sniffed him, and kept alert, as if to make sure the danger was truly gone. Because heroism doesn't switch off. Loyalty, courage, love, they don't turn off when the crisis ends. You could see it in her tiny stance, eyes scanning, tail still wagging with purpose. And that's what stayed with everyone who witnessed it. The way a small dog could hold such presence, such responsibility, and save a life in a way that nobody else had noticed. I want to pause here because this is just part one. The setup, the tension, the hook, and the beginning of Bella's incredible act of courage. By the end of this part, you can feel the heat, the suspense, the urgency. And what's coming next? Well, that's where the real heroics take over, where persistence, determination, and courage collide in a way that makes everyone watching hold their breath. The moment the police arrived, the tension in the street was almost tangible. Neighbors had gathered by now, some with umbrellas, some with hand fans, all of them watching this tiny little dog work tirelessly to save a life. Bella hadn't stopped once. She was still pressing her paws against the horn, jumping, yipping, and barking in a frenzy that made it impossible for anyone to ignore. And the funny thing is, even though she was so small, there was a presence about her that was impossible to deny. You could feel it in the way people instinctively took a step back, almost in awe of her determination. The officers approached cautiously, but quickly realized that the situation was dire. The car's interior was already radiating heat, the dashboard blistering under the sun, and every second that Lucas stayed inside was dangerous. One officer knelt beside Bella, giving her a gentle pat, whispering, "Good girl, just hold on a little longer, okay?" And Bella, for just a fraction of a second, looked up at him, almost as if acknowledging that she had an ally now, before turning back to the car, still honking like her life depended on it. I want you to imagine that scene for a second, the sheer chaos, the urgency, and this little dog refusing to be distracted. People were pulling out water bottles, wetting towels to fan the baby, and talking frantically to the parents. And Bella, she just kept going. Every bark, every squeal, every frantic jump was a pulse of determination that made you want to cheer and cry at the same time. It wasn't just about noise. It was about persistence. It was about refusing to give up when lives are on the line. Lucas was still sleeping through most of the commotion. The heat was dangerous, yes, but somehow, the baby remained unaware, completely trusting that someone, or something, was looking out for him. And in this case, that something was Bella. She had somehow understood the urgency before anyone else, and she was holding her own against an environment that could overwhelm her in seconds. The officers worked quickly, unlocking the doors and carefully opening them, bracing against the heat that rushed out like a wave. And I'll tell you, there's something almost cinematic about the way Bella reacted. She didn't jump away or hide. She stayed right at the door, barking, circling, keeping Lucas safe with her presence. Every step the officers took, every hand that reached for the baby, Bella was there, vigilant, insisting that this was serious business. Once Lucas was lifted from the car and placed safely in the arms of his mother, there was a collective exhale that you could practically hear. The crowd dispersed a little, some people wiping their brows, some shaking their heads in disbelief. But Bella didn't relax immediately. She stayed close to Lucas, nuzzling him gently, sniffing him, and occasionally glancing at the police officers as if to make sure the baby was truly safe. It was a level of loyalty, intelligence, and awareness that you rarely see in an animal of her size. And it was humbling to witness. Emily, Lucas's mom, collapsed onto the pavement in relief, tears streaming down her face. Jake, holding towels and trying to fan Lucas, kept glancing at Bella with a mixture of gratitude and disbelief. "I don't know how to thank her," he said, voice shaking. "And really, how could you? She hadn't just alerted someone. She had taken responsibility. She had acted without hesitation, without training, purely driven by instinct, love, and perhaps a tiny bit of doggy stubbornness." Neighbors started talking, sharing what they had seen. "She wouldn't stop," one woman said. "I've never seen a dog like that. She was relentless." And that's exactly it. Relentless. Bella had become a small whirlwind of courage and determination, and in doing so, she reminded everyone watching just how much bravery can come from the most unexpected places. Now, I have to mention something important. This wasn't a perfectly safe scenario. The car could have overheated in minutes. The baby could have stirred, panicked, or worse. But Bella's persistence gave the police the extra seconds they needed to arrive and act. Every bark, every honk, every frantic jump on the horn bought time. A precious, irreplaceable amount of time. And time, in situations like this, is everything. Once Lucas was fully safe and hydrated, wrapped in a cool blanket, Bella finally seemed to relax. But even then, she didn't wander off or look for a nap. She stayed close, circling Lucas, wagging her tail in little bursts, still alert, still watching. It was almost like she was saying, "I'm not letting anything happen to you, buddy. Not today." And for everyone witnessing it, that level of dedication was awe-inspiring. The police officers praised her, gave her gentle pats, and even jokingly offered her a little medal or treat. Bella, naturally, ignored the medal but happily accepted the treats. And there's something electric about watching a tiny dog that just saved a life get that recognition, not because she wanted it, but because she had earned it. What struck everyone most, though, wasn't just the heroics, it was the timing. Bella had acted before anyone else even realized the danger. Before the heat could become critical, before anyone could react, she had taken charge of the situation. She had become the alarm, the protector, and the first responder all in one. And in doing so, she had reminded everyone watching that heroism isn't measured by size or reputation. It's measured by action, courage, and unwavering commitment to those you care about. I'll be honest with you, watching her that day, you couldn't help but feel a little emotional. People laughed. Yes, because a tiny Pomeranian honking a horn nonstop is also hilarious in a slightly absurd way. But under the humor was something deeper, something profoundly moving. This little creature had just saved a human life. She had done it with no fear, no hesitation, and no expectation of reward. And as a community, as neighbors, as humans watching, you felt an instant connection to that courage, because it was so raw, so pure, and so relatable. And the story didn't end there. Social media lit up almost immediately. People were posting photos of Bella, videos of her honking the horn, praising her bravery. The Garcia family received messages from friends, neighbors, and strangers alike, all marveling at how a tiny dog could do something so extraordinary. It became a local legend almost overnight. People started joking about it, calling her Officer Bella, or the tiny hero. But underneath the humor was genuine respect. Everyone knew they had witnessed something unforgettable. Even days later, Lucas's parents said that Bella never strayed far from him. She would lie nearby, watch over him while he slept, and sometimes, if he fussed even a little, she would nudge him gently or bark softly to alert the parents. Her actions had become routine, but it was clear that the instincts that saved his life were still present. Bella wasn't done watching, wasn't done caring, and that level of responsibility in such a small package left a lasting impression on everyone. And it wasn't just about Lucas. Watching Bella that day made everyone think about their own lives, about how courage shows up when it's needed, often in ways you least expect. It's a reminder that action matters more than size, persistence matters more than strength, and love, genuine, selfless love, can make a difference in moments that truly count. Neighbors continued to visit the Garcia family in the following days, bringing small gifts, praising Bella, and sharing stories of how her courage inspired them. And you could see it in the way Lucas responded, calm, happy, completely secure with Bella nearby. The bond between dog and baby had deepened in a way that only life-threatening experiences can create. And that bond, that unspoken understanding, is what makes this story so unforgettable. By the time evening came, the heat had finally receded, the sun dipping behind the suburban rooftops, and the neighborhood returned to its usual rhythm. But the story of Bella's heroics lingered. People still talked about her at local stores, in cafes, and on community boards. And every time they did, they remembered the image of a tiny Pomeranian, soaked in sweat from the pavement, honking a car horn nonstop, refusing to quit until a baby's life was safe. That's the magic of this story, the juxtaposition of size and courage, humor and tension, danger and relief. It's cinematic in every sense, but it's real. And it's proof that heroism doesn't need a cape, it doesn't need a title, and it certainly doesn't need to be big. Sometimes, it just needs a tiny heart willing to act when the moment demands it. By the time the sun was sinking behind the rooftops of Phoenix, the neighborhood had finally settled back into a quiet rhythm. The heat of the day still lingered on the asphalt, but inside the Garcia home, there was a sense of relief, gratitude, and a little bit of awe that can only come from witnessing something extraordinary. Lucas was safe, wrapped in a cool blanket, drinking water, and sleeping peacefully, and Bella, well, Bella was finally able to lie down without jumping at every little sound. But even as she rested, you could tell she was still alert, still aware, because her mission, for her, wasn't quite over. Emily and Jake, still catching their breath, looked at Bella with the kind of admiration that words can barely describe. I don't know what we would have done without her, Emily said softly, tears in her eyes. Jake nodded, gently stroking Bella's fur, still amazed that something so small had accomplished what even adults struggled to do. And in that moment, you realize that heroism doesn't always show up in the ways we expect. Sometimes it shows up in a tiny bundle of fur with paws that barely reach the pedal of a car horn. Over the next few days, the story of Bella spread through the community like wildfire. Neighbors stopped by just to pat her on the head, local news crews wanted interviews, and friends from nearby towns were sharing the story online, calling her the tiny hero of Phoenix. And while it was entertaining to hear people joking about her being a four-legged superhero, the underlying message was powerful and real. A small act, persistent and brave, can save a life. What's remarkable about this story, though, isn't just the attention or the praise Bella received. It's the way it changed the Garcia family's perspective. They became more aware, more vigilant, and incredibly grateful, not just for Bella, but for the reminder that life is fragile, and that sometimes, protection comes from the most unexpected places. Lucas, too young to understand the drama that had unfolded, had already formed a bond with Bella that only a shared experience like this could create. She wasn't just a pet. She was a guardian, a friend, and now, in a very real sense, a lifesaver. Watching Bella that day made everyone who witnessed it think differently about courage. It's not always measured by size, strength, or even skill. Sometimes, courage is measured by persistence, by willingness to act when the situation seems impossible. Bella didn't hesitate. She didn't overthink. She just knew what had to be done, and she did it. And in doing so, she reminded everyone watching that true bravery often comes in quiet, determined bursts rather than grand, cinematic gestures. Even as life returned to normal in the Garcia household, the lessons lingered. Bella continued to keep a watchful eye on Lucas, whether he was napping or crawling around the house. The parents installed reminders about car safety, shared the story with friends, and became vocal advocates for never leaving children unattended in vehicles, especially during extreme heat. But every time someone asked about the real hero, they would point to Bella, the tiny Pomeranian who refused to ignore danger, who refused to quit, and who saved a baby's life with nothing more than courage, persistence, and a whole lot of heart. And there's something profoundly human about that. Seeing a dog act with such awareness and dedication makes you reflect on your own life, your own instincts, and how often we underestimate courage simply because it comes in a small package. Bella didn't have training, she didn't have a plan, and she certainly didn't expect recognition. All she had was love and a refusal to stand by while someone she cared about was in danger. And in that, there's a lesson for all of us. Bravery isn't always about heroic titles or medals. Sometimes, it's about showing up, acting decisively, and refusing to give up when the stakes are highest. The police officers who responded later commented on the situation, calling it a rare example of instinctive heroism. And it truly was. Bella had not only alerted people to the danger, but had effectively bought enough time for Lucas to be rescued safely. If she had stopped even for a moment, if she had grown distracted, the outcome could have been tragically different. Instead, she persevered, and the reward was not just applause, but the preservation of life. As the story circulated online, people from all over started sharing their own experiences with pets that had stepped up in critical moments. Some were humorous, some were dramatic, and some were touching in ways that mirrored Bella's story. And it reinforced an idea that Americans often hold dear. The bond between humans and animals is powerful, profound, and capable of inspiring extraordinary courage. Bella's heroics weren't just about saving a baby. They were about reminding everyone who witnessed or heard the story that loyalty, love, and courage can come in the smallest, most unexpected forms. By the end of the week, Lucas's parents made sure Bella received her fair share of attention, treats, and praise, though in true Pomeranian fashion, she mostly cared about belly rubs and the occasional chew toy. And yet, every now and then, you could see her glance at the car, ears twitching, as if to make sure that everything was still okay. That vigilance, that instinct to protect, was the real magic of her story. It wasn't about accolades, it was about commitment. So here's the takeaway. Heroes don't always wear capes. Sometimes, they have 4 paws, a fluffy coat, and a tiny, determined heart. Sometimes, heroism is about persistence, action, and refusing to let fear or distraction prevent you from doing what's right. Bella taught the community of Phoenix, and everyone who hears her story, that courage is not measured by size, but by the willingness to act when it matters most. And now, I want to leave you with a question. If you were in that situation, hearing the heat rising in a parked car, watching a child in danger, what would you do? Could you act with the same focus, persistence, and courage as a tiny dog like Bella? Maybe not in the same way, but the lesson remains. Courage is showing up. Loyalty is taking responsibility. And sometimes, the smallest among us can teach the biggest lessons about bravery. So share your stories. Think about the pets in your life. And remember that heroes aren't always the ones you expect. Sometimes, they're the ones you can barely pick up in your arms. And in Bella's case, that tiny, golden, yipping bundle of determination changed everything for Lucas, his family, and everyone lucky enough to witness her courage.